Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for October 2nd, 2023. I want to begin with a scheduling note. Tomorrow is German Unity Day, and it's a holiday to commemorate the reunification of Germany in 1990. Now, given the nature of the current coalition government, which I'll get to in a moment, in which there's been total submission to NATO's permanent war policy and the Green Agenda, which together are leading a collapse into deindustrialization and economic collapse, there's not too much to celebrate. And what we should remember is the lost opportunity of 1989, when there was a chance to put to end forever the Cold War policy of an anti-Russian approach from the West. But given that as it is, we have to use this as an opportunity to bring Germany and the rest of the West to a competent policy, a new strategic architecture. And so that's what we're doing. But because of the holiday tomorrow in Germany, I will not be doing an update. It's also the 5th birthday of my daughter, so I won't be with you tomorrow, but I will be back on Wednesday. So with my daughter's birthday, we at least have something to celebrate. Now, it's very difficult to exaggerate just how deluded and arrogant the United Kingdom government is at this point. They were pushing the Ukraine counteroffensive as the way to bring Russia to the bargaining table. And instead, it's putting Ukraine on the scrap heap of history with a wholesale destruction of the younger generation in Ukraine in war and leading to the likelihood of a further devolution of the country. But you have to then look at the situation in the United Kingdom. United Kingdom is falling apart. Its leaders are completely idiotic. The healthcare system's collapsing. The inflation, the energy prices are destroying the living standards. And in this context, you have a new defense minister, Grant Shapps, who did his pilgrimage to Kiev and kissing the ring of Zelensky. And he came back and he said that after these meetings with Zelensky and the new defense secretary Umerov of Ukraine, that there will be changes in the UK-Ukrainian relationship to become more close. He made 3 points. One, British troops will be training Ukrainian military closer to Ukraine. Actually, he said, into Ukraine as well. So that means the deployment of British military to train Ukrainian troops in Ukraine. He called on British defense firms, this is the second point, to set up factories in Ukraine, following the precedent of Germany's Rheinmetall, which has a joint venture with Ukraine to produce and repair tanks, which at the rate at which the Leopard tanks are being destroyed by the Russians, they'll have a lot of business there. So the British are going to set up factories in Ukraine. Well, how long before those get taken out? And the third point he made is that he talked to Zelensky about having the Royal Navy in the Black Sea to protect shipping there. The Royal Navy was the instrument of British imperial policy in the 19th century into the 20th century. Is this really the image of New Britain that the leadership of the country wants to present? Now, Medvedev, who's the deputy secretary of the Russian Security Council, had a sharp response to this. He referred to Shapps as, quote, one newly minted moron, unquote, and warned that if the British send military trainers into Ukraine, they become legitimate targets for the Russian military. Now, according to the London Independent, Prime Minister Sunak hurriedly backtracked on this, on Shapps' comments. He said that training in Ukraine, quote, might be possible one day in the future, unquote, but that no British soldiers will be sent to fight. And he said the training of Ukrainian soldiers will still be done by the British, but it will be done in the United Kingdom. Now, he didn't counter Shapps' comments about BAE and other defense firms moving manufacturing into Ukraine, but we'll see what happens with that. Now, at the same time, the French military announced that its aircraft are conducting surveillance over the Black Sea. So maybe with the confirmation that Elon Musk's Starlink system will not be providing a cover for Ukrainian operations in the Black Sea, are the French going to do that? And remember, the French Air Force was instrumental in the destruction of Libya. Then you have the leading German Warhawk, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, who's never met a war that she couldn't embrace. And by the way, that's probably the only thing that would allow her to embrace it. She's the chairwoman of the Defense Committee of the Bundestag and a leader of the Free Democratic Party. She's pushing for Germany to send the long-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine. And what she said is that they can strike deep inside Russia, which, in her view, is a legal decision to make given the state of the war. And of course, this would be, in her mind, to supplement the U.S. ATACMS missiles, which are also long-range, which have not yet been approved by the United States. So as this relentless push for permanent war from NATO governments continues, take note that these governments are in trouble and the overall war party in NATO is on the defensive. In elections over the weekend in Slovakia, the anti-war party came in first. It will be difficult for it to put together a coalition government, but the fact is that it ran ahead of the existing government, which has been supporting Ukraine, and it shows the increasing sentiment against the war in that country. You have in the United Kingdom, the latest poll is bad news for Sunak and the Tories. The Independent reported that if elections were held now, 6 Tory cabinet members would lose their positions. That is, they would lose their elections in their districts and would not be part of the government. And that the Tory government would lose massive number of seats to Labour. And by the way, Labour is no great shakes. In fact, Labour and Starmer continues to be a supporter of the war. But the fact is that a splintering of the Tory party at this point would be good for humanity. Then you have the situation in Germany where polls show that the coalition parties are collapsing in support. The Social Democratic Party, who provided the Chancellor Scholz, is now at 17% in the polls. The Greens are down to 14%. And with Foreign Minister Baerbock and the clueless economics minister Habeck, who's out to destroy the auto sector and the construction sector, that 14% is probably going to drop further. And the Free Democrats, the party of Strack-Zimmermann, the ultimate Warhawk, is now at 6%, which means if elections were held today, it would barely hold on to its position in the parliament. So, and in Italy, the Meloni government is falling because of the immigration problem, but also because of support for the war. So these major parties in Europe that have subordinated themselves to the unipolar order of the United States and London are all collapsing. Now, the question then becomes, what about the United States? And the latest Washington Post poll was so alarming that the Washington Post didn't even report it. If elections were held today between Biden and Trump, Trump would win 52 to 42, in spite of the fact that Trump has been hit with 4 indictments in the last several months and will be on trial between now and the elections in November. He still has a double-digit lead over Biden. Now, it's also the case that there was the budget was a defeat for the Biden team because the final compromise included a drastic cut in the amount of money that will go in the next budget to Ukraine. Now, this caused Joseph Borrell, the Warhawk from the European Commission, to say he was surprised by this, but after speaking with Biden, Biden said this will be changed. Well, we'll see if it is. There's growing anti-war sentiment in the United States and an impeachment proceeding against Joe Biden. I don't know how far that's going to go, but it's clear that there's evidence of corruption, at least with his son, Hunter, which Joe Biden continues to deny and deflect. So we'll see what happens in the United States. The question is, how can these governments survive if they're continuing to push a war which could lead to World War III with Russia? Now, that's why the International Peace Coalition that is led by Helga Zepp-LaRouche and the Schiller Institute is so important, and how when you combine that with the momentum from the BRICS, from the Global South, the rejection of the war policy of NATO, and the moves toward a new development architecture, these governments in Europe are losing their power to impose their will on behalf of the corporate cartels that own them. So we're in a very interesting situation, and in this context, we have to consider the importance of the peace plan offered by 4 prominent Germans. Now, some of you have written to me saying, look, this peace plan has within it language attacking Russia as aggressive. It's not so clear-cut, and how can it be supported? Because Russia cannot be expected to compromise and give up the claim to Crimea and the Donbass. Well, look, there are parts of it that are perhaps not acceptable to the Russians, probably not fully acceptable to those people who want to see the war end. However, what's important is that it's a step in Germany toward building an anti-war coalition. And while the Russians would not be so willing to accept a compromise which says that they were the aggressor, on the other hand, Helga Zepp-LaRouche pointed out that the Russians don't want to have a nuclear war. They don't want to be pushed to the point where they have to do that. And so the Russians are looking for changes in the West, and join us to make sure those changes take place. I'm going to be appending at the bottom of the description page a link to the call from the 4 German experts, and I hope you'll read it, consider it, discuss it, and join with us in the International Peace Coalition. So remember, no update tomorrow on Tuesday, October 3rd, and I'll see you again on Wednesday.